It's true.
He does have protein bar. Well, hey,
We come on Scott and a toothbrush.
Welcome to another episode of Live here on Keystroke Medium. It is season 2, episode 67. I am Josh Hayes here with my co-hostesses, Scott Moon.
Doesn't floss Scott.
Doesn't go as Scott. And we would like to welcome our new co-host of the show, C. Stephen Manley, or as we like to call him here locally, Chuck the Man, Chuck Manley, is joining us for his first time on that side of the microphone. And today, the best-selling author of the Duchess of Terra, Starship Mage, Castle Federation, and Vigilante series is Glynn Stewart. Joins the show. Glynn has been writing and publishing since 2013, and today he joins us to talk about his writing journey. Glynn, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
And we're really excited to have you here, and hopefully that our shenanigans will lead to a productive and informing podcast. We'll see. If you guys can hear, my throat is I'm coming down with or have caught a bug that's been going around, and so I feel like there's sandpaper on my throat, and so I'm gonna probably shut up for a while and allow Scott and Chuck to.
It's probably because you blew a bunch of stuff up in training this week.
That is true.
A lot of dust and shrapnel fragments
for your vocal cords.
It was a Japanese knee mortar from World War II. Somebody had brought back, and they found in this dude's basement. And
hey, I had this garage sale. What's this?
Yeah, and they're like,
catch.
Is there anything in it? It's not ticking. Put it down. So
people new to the show, that's one of Josh's jobs at our day job is to get rid of things that could blow you into tiny pieces. So
we blow up things that blow up things.
Right.
So,
good times.
Glenn,
so for those of you running, run faster.
Yeah, if Josh is running, you should already be gone.
I'm gonna get that patch and put it right here on my tack vest, or maybe on my back. So if you can read it, you're like, oh, you can read it. Keep up.
Yeah.
Glenn, for the people that aren't familiar with you or your work, would you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in writing?
How I got started in writing would be functionally impossible because I don't remember when I started.
Oh.
I have been writing for as long as I remember. So awesome. I had an agent when I was younger who tried to get my stuff into traditional publishing. We never had much luck with that. And then my now wife read one of my short stories, I think, and said, you need to, self-publish this. So we self-published the Starship Mage novellas, which are now Starship Mage Book 1. And everything after that was history to a large extent. As you were saying, I've got 4 ongoing series at the moment. One of them has a side series in the Starship Mage Red Falcon. And I'm launching more series because I'm insane. But mostly it's space opera with the space fantasy side of it in the Starship Mage stuff and a little bit of branching out into urban fantasy.
Excellent. We all know, for the record, that sanity will get you nowhere in the publishing business. You gotta be.
That is very true.
That is true. Yeah.
Can you tell me your first name pronunciation one more time? Because I butchered it during the pre-show.
Glynn.
Glynn. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I think I can do that right, but I probably won't because I'm a big animal.
So
as a podcast.
Your Starship Mage series is probably, I think, one of the series that people know you most for.
Yep.
And that you, like you mentioned, you have a spinoff of that, which is the Interstellar Mage series, which you just launched the book 1 of that a week ago. So tell us about the premise of Starship Mage and what happens in that universe.
So Starship Mage began as a thought experiment, which was basically, since so much space opera and science fiction is full of hand waving around the faster than light travel and all that kind of stuff, Starship Mage is actually a hard science fiction setting with mages.
I like it.
So all the stuff we don't understand is literally done by magic.
I like that.
I read a little of the look inside stuff in a lot of your books, and I went to your bio and checked you out and everything, and I noticed that what I read, you did a really, really good job of balancing those 2 elements in the narrative. Mm-hmm. Like the magic is not too over the top. This, that they can only jump every few hours and stuff like that. but it doesn't in any way erase the science, and then vice versa. Did you plan it that way, or did that just sort of come out in the discovery writing or whatever?
I tried to plan it that way, if nothing else. There's definitely some distinct stuff around what it is at its core. It's a science fiction story around a big what if. I mean, that's where it started. It's sprawled out a bit from there into something more along the lines of Verkostigan style troubleshooter saga. But it began at its core, it's a science fiction story with magic bolted on. But the magic is also the core what if of the science fiction story.
Gotcha.
So it wouldn't exist without both aspects.
So can you go in a little bit more detail about what is the what if that you started with?
What if magic was the solution for all the things we can't do technologically?
Okay, awesome. That's kind of what I was getting, but I'll make sure I was tracking and keeping up.
Yeah. It's the phrase that comes up a few times in the book is, for all of humanity's advanced technology, it was magic that gave them the stars.
Oh yeah, I like that. That's
a
great tagline.
So I'm curious because a lot of people pin Star Wars as science fiction with magic, but Star Wars is more science fantasy, and you mentioned hard science fiction with magic. So how does it work here? I mean, you mentioned the FTL, that's how they travel, but can you kind of give us like a little rundown of how the magic system works and how that happens? If that's not going to ruin the books.
Yeah. Behind the scenes, and the stuff that's never made it into the book because even the characters haven't worked it out yet, it's macro scale quantum probabilistic manipulation.
Oh yeah, I got that.
Write that
I was just
down.
thinking that would be that.
So basically, at a quantum level, energy levels and everything are expressed as probabilities rather than actual solid fact. So there is theoretically, very theoretically, a minuscule chance that in the next second, every molecule in your body, every quantum piece of your body, could decide it wants to be on Mars. That
Which
possibility
would be inconvenient.
Yes, the possibility is functionally non-existent in any practical sense, but it is, in theory, possible because the quantum particles are shifting all over the place. What the mages do is they force that probability to happen. And because it's all based off of that couple of concepts, they're quite limited in what they can do. Like, there's no mental magic in the books.
Okay.
It's all strictly physical, moving objects and manipulating energy.
Okay.
So there isn't like there's not a force type of energy where they use it as a fighting mechanism or anything like that. It's
no.
Okay.
They can't mind read or do telekinesis, or
they can do telekinesis. That falls into the moving objects and manipulating energy thing.
Right.
So their combat magic, they do have combat magic, and it's more along the lines of, fireballs and lightning bolts. Then I have cast haste on myself and I'm running 3 times faster. To be a mage that heals, you need to be a doctor. Because
it'll wrong if you use your magic wrongly and you're just sitting there flipping around.
You can't just say, I heal this person. It's, I need to move this vein over here kind of thing. You have to know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
So, like, let's say if Josh was entering into your story universe and he wanted to start becoming an Interstellar Mage, where would he start out? Do they have like are you born with it? Can you be trained to it? Is there?
It's a born with it. So the origin of it is that at one point in the past, a bunch of serious, keeping it PG-13, we'll just say seriously bad people, carried out a massive eugenics project to breed magic back into humanity. They killed about 150,000 people doing it, force breeding kits, basically, to create the mages.
A little bit like Dune, where they do the Bene Gesserit does all the forced.
Look, you can't make an omelet without cracking some eggs.
Yeah.
Or 150,000 eggs.
150,000 eggs.
It's a pretty big omelet, okay?
It's a big omelet. It's like a space omelet. I mean, it's obviously huge.
Space omelet.
Sorry.
So
go ahead.
most of their mages are mages by blood They're descended from the survivors of that project. And then they have the occasional oddity pop up where, because they can now identify it, they do find mages in the general population who, without training, otherwise would just have been a little bit luckier than everybody else.
Right.
Because
Now,
they can
what
now
I
identify it.
read, the ones who are mages by birth, they're sort of like the aristocrats, right? They're like the hoity-toity folks.
They're basically, they're blood. They are rich, they are powerful, and they are what's tying the protectorate together. Without the mages, there is no protectorate.
Okay, and then the mages by right, they're sort of like, okay, you're a mage, but you're just not as good as the other mages, kind of thing, right?
You're a mage, and you've got all the legal privileges and all the powers and all of that. But Joe over there, his mom knows 3 starship captains.
Right.
Your dad's a baker.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
There's no real active prejudice against mages by right. They just simply do not have the connections that the mages by blood have.
Are the mages kind of a source for the economy, or a driving force in that, or do they get any special privileges in the economy because of their powers? Or
so the deal that they basically ended the war that the mages were created for with is called the Compact, and basically what it is in exchange for having their own courts and to a certain extent their own laws for a lot of the stuff, magic is used to serve. So they're flying starships and working in power plants and all of those sorts of things. They have day jobs, and the magic is what holds their economy together and has allowed their technology to stagnate to a certain extent. But they are the only real economic privilege is that there's a stipend in place so that a mage who is unemployed doesn't go take up piracy.
Right.
It's not necessarily successful at that goal, but that's part of its purpose.
Right.
Is to remove the desperation factor that might otherwise drive the mages into doing illegal shit.
very neat. And right now it's a 5-book series and then a spinoff.
Yep.
Do you have more spinoffs planned, or do you have an end game in sight for the series?
So there are 2 more books in the Red Falcon series, the sequels to Interstellar Mage. Then there is a 2 to 3 book sequel series to Starship Mage, which kind of covers the aftermath, covers the war basically that starts at the end of that series. And then there is probably 1 more series after that, delving into some of the really ugly background stuff and where it came from.
Very neat. And then you also have the the Duchy of Terra books.
Yep.
Is that in the same universe as Starship Mage, or completely different?
None of the only thing that's in the same universe is Starship Mage and Starship Mage Red Falcon. All the series are their own universes.
Can you tell us about the premise of the Duchy of Terra books?
The Duchy of Terra books are basically, it's what happens if we're invaded by aliens and conquered and annexed, and then realize that the guys who annexed us they're not great. The guys next door who are looking at us rather hungrily are worse. So given a choice between being prey or being a pet, we choose to be a pet, basically. And build ourselves up as a member planet of this Imperium that's annexed us.
It's kind of the worst of 2 or best of 2 bad choices type of situation.
Exactly.
The better of 2 weevils, as it
you must always choose the lesser of 2 weevils.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking a lot about Master and Commander before in the pre-show, so that's probably
so that's a 3-book series. Is that done and wrapped up?
The Duchy of Terra trilogy is wrapped up. There is a sequel trilogy, probably haven't decided the exact time frame, but it'll probably be set about 10 years later. That'll be starting starting next year, I think. I have to actually check my schedule.
It seems like the Duchy of Terra series has quite a solid following. You have lots of good reviews, got some feedback. How do you stay in touch with your fans, or have a way to get feedback on your books from them?
I have a beta reader, well, an ARC list more than a beta readers list, and they usually give me some feedback. I have a Facebook author page where I pay attention to what gets posted there, and I have a Twitter, and people can email me. I don't always get back to them, but they can email me.
Awesome. Well, you probably got a lot of emails, I imagine. So that's great. Let's see what else we got, Josh.
There's the Terry Mixon collab project, The Heart of Vengeance, which is the Vigilante series.
Yep.
First of all, that I've listened to a couple of your interviews already, and this is a book that you've been working on for a while, that you've had kind of tucked in a corner, basically, and brought it out, and now you and Terry Mixon are kind of co-writing the books. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how that collaboration started?
I was looking for somebody to co-write the books, and I had a list of about 3 names, and Terry was the first one I contacted, and he apparently almost drove off the road when he got my message. So, so his response was basically, yes, please, yes, please. So I didn't go any further down my list because Terry was right away in. Mostly
hanging a little bit, like, okay, thanks for your interest, Terry. Anybody else? Anybody else? Anybody? Terry, put your hand down.
Enthusiasm is important.
Enthusiasm is important. Terry's done a really good job with the setting and the characters that I joke, and Terry laughs at me for this, that there are 3 co-writers to this book. There's 33-year-old Glynn, there's Terry Mixon, and there's 19-year-old Glynn, who's the poor bugger who originally wrote the story.
Yeah.
The truth is, this one got rewritten pretty heavily at least once along the way, so probably like 26-year-old Glynn is in there too.
So do you think, how do you think that affected the overall story? I mean, is it have different depths or layers, or, I mean, because you obviously learned different things.
I did. Terry took brought a different perspective to it as well. The biggest problem with it was I could only, every time I tried to rewrite it, I ran up against the hard blockade of it needed to be 2 books.
Right.
It's just with what I'd done with the story, it absolutely needed to be 2 books. And I could come together, I get the energy together to, rewrite the book, make a bunch of edits. I couldn't really get myself to sit down, chop the book in 2, and write 2 books out of it. So I got Terry to do that instead.
Good deal.
Now, I noticed in your bio that it seemed like you were a pretty avid PC and tabletop gamer.
Yep.
And you talk about the younger yous. I'm a gamer myself, so you talk about the younger yous writing these books. How much did RPG tabletop scenario like building and construction play into your actual method for getting those original books done? And does it still do that? Because I still sort of fall back on that sometimes myself.
I'm far more of a pantser as a GM.
Are you?
My writing is much more structured than my games writing.
Okay, cool.
The fact that I suspect that the same thing of, sit back and let the characters do what they're going to do inside the outline you've drawn is a factor in my writing as well. But I never would have thought about it that way until you said it.
Because I've always found that a GM kind of creates a setting and a situation, and then the characters show up and the story grows out of that. And sometimes I think that's kind of what we do as writers too. It's just we create the characters. And discovery writing, it's how all that sort of happens.
I'm not really a discovery writer, so.
Okay, cool.
I'm an outliner.
Nothing wrong
Josh
with that.
is also an outliner.
That's right. Outliners unite, but first we need to make a plan.
Yeah.
Yep.
Outliners
ignore half the plan.
Unite.
We will ignore half the plan once we've made it, but we do have to make the plan first.
It's just more of a thought exercise than anything we're actually going to follow all the way to the end.
Exactly.
It's funny.
Brainstorming session.
What's funny about that is I bought this huge whiteboard that's over here that I'm looking at.
Let's look at it.
And I can't turn the camera over there.
Oh, damn it.
But anyway, so when I was outlining a short story for the Explorations War anthology, and I covered this entire board with little notes and scenes and chapters, and I backed off after about 45 minutes, and I was like, that's a damn good story. I like that. Sat down, wrote it completely, not anything that I outlined on the board. Way so different. The ending was different. The character ended up doing something completely that I had never written down. And so I'm an outliner, but
Yeah, but sometimes the point of the outline is just to get you going and give you something to shoot for.
Right.
You know, just
The
give you
outline
a
makes a great
general
skeleton.
direction.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
You got to put
Yeah.
the flesh on it, and sometimes by the time you're done putting the flesh on it, the skeleton's gotten a little broken. But
Right.
you got the skeleton. You got the place to start.
Yeah, that draft ended up looking like the Hunchback in Notre Dame because the skeleton.
The skeleton was
Your own
made
personal
perfect for it.
Frankenstein.
Glenn, I'm looking through your. I mean, you've got a lot of books on Amazon.
20, I believe.
I was going to say at least 20.
Wow.
It looks like you may have a fantasy or two
Yep.
stories written in there. The Children of Prophecy, and then
Yep.
City in the Sky almost looks
Yep.
like a fantasy / science fiction, maybe.
It's an odd one, but it's
Okay.
mostly fantasy. It's more of a Renaissance steampunk fantasy as much as anything else.
Oh, neat.
Do you see a lot of reader carryover between your more sci-fi stuff and your more
Nope.
fantasy stuff?
There's a reason
No.
there's only 2 of them.
Wow. All right.
And the Onset series, is that
That's urban fantasy.
urban fantasy?
So
And-
go ahead.
Go ahead, Scott.
I'm curious about that because that's something we all a lot of us read broadly and write broadly. I'm talking about our guests and our friends, people we know on the show. And so a lot of people write a whole bunch in one genre, but they also got other books in them. And so that idea of crossover or carryover read through from different types of things, I've always been amazed why there's not more. And so, I mean, I really don't know if I have a question here, but I'd like to discuss that. What makes, I mean, how much different are your books that are in a different genre? Is that because of the setup, the setting, I don't know.
Yeah, like the urban fantasies, my urban fantasies are quite different from my space opera. There's still kind of some of the same underlying themes and underlying tone of optimism, that kind of thing, but it is quite different. And I think I got a good chunk of carryover to the first Onset book, and not so much read through from the first Onset book. A lot of people gave it a shot and really didn't find it was their thing because I had space opera readers, and then they handed them an urban fantasy throughout.
Well, and even then, I mean, you published the urban fantasy in well, it's got 200 something reviews, which is not shabby by any means for any book. And so you published it last November, and even the carryover from that is pretty decent. I think that anyone would label as a success as a series, but then you go back and you're right. You look at your other series, and the reviews and the ranking is much higher on your other series.
If you looked at the Onset series in isolation, it's brilliant. It's done quite well. But if you look at it in comparison to my other stuff, and the fall off from book 2 to book 3 was painful. Like book 3 did not. There was a good momentum for the first 2 books because I released them together, and then it just did not carry on to the 3rd book.
So at what point, and I'm sure we have some listeners and viewers that are going to run into this. At what point you decide, because you obviously like that, or you wouldn't spend the time writing them. At what point you decide, okay, I'm going to put my efforts over here? And is there any tips on that could help us?
It's a hard decision to make. It depends on what your own time on. It's a little easier for me to keep going with something because I'm writing 6 to 8 books a year. I can afford to have, like, it hurt when Onset 3 really didn't do as well as we were expecting, but it was survivable because it was just 1 book out of, I think it's 11 we're launching this year.
Yeah.
So, but Onset 3 did poorly enough that there will only be 1 more Onset book. And that's just because I feel I need to go back and wrap up all the loose ends and kind of tie out the series.
We talked about that too, where sometimes you'll be in the middle of a series that's not performing well. As I'm talking to general writers who often experience this, and the instinct is to finish it out, or else you'll somehow not fulfill your promise to the readers in that series. But I've heard other people say, if it's not selling, move to something new and just start, and not necessarily feel obligated to finish the 5-book series you started.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
Onset was originally planned to kind of be an extended episodic series and kind of go along as it went, see what happened. So at the point when, and there was always a rough end game in play, and it was always sort of set up so that once the series stopped selling, that end game book could be read and dropped in and close off the series. And so that I'm doing that a few books earlier than I was hoping to, but that was always basically the plan.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting to me because you're number 12 author rank in science fiction as of right now, which congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And then in fantasy, you're number 48, which is still, I mean, a good number with all the numbers that are on Amazon author-wise. But you can definitely see a difference there between. And do you think it has something to do with the genre with the read-through numbers, or?
Well, I show up well on fantasy because Starship Mage is actually categorized in both.
Ah, okay.
Okay, good.
So that the fantasy ranking there is mostly riding on the Tales of Starship Mage, especially right now when I just launched a Starship Mage book, than it is riding on the back of Onset or my 2 standalone fantasies from 3 years ago, however long ago that was.
Right.
It seems longer than it was.
It's interesting to me, and I don't always get it intuitively, but I think that a science fiction readership and a fantasy readership are not always. I mean, they have some they're different, and I think it shows in the way books sell and stuff. I also like to think that as time goes by, that those series that you're kind of like they're like simmering, you know, and they eventually will take off. Something changes. So, but you know,
reader interests are so like fluid. You know, one day you could do something now that just kind of sits there, but then 6 months from now something similar to it hits, and suddenly that thing skyrockets. I mean,
in my experience, my books that make 70% of their money in the first 30 days.
Yeah.
So I kind of plan around that and not around anything coming along. And
sure. Yeah, you can't plan on the unknown. Absolutely.
I mean, I know City in the Sky, I basically get a Facebook comment or a message or an email every month going, is there going to be a sequel to this?
Yeah, sure. I promise.
Yeah, get 10,000 of your closest friends to buy it and we'll talk.
Yeah. Help me out here. Excellent.
So I'm wondering with the success that your science fiction is having, and obviously the success that your urban fantasy has had, maybe not on the same level. What's the thinking of? Is that the urban fantasies that are coming out next? Are those different from the ones you've already written?
They are, yeah.
And
so, Onset is very much an urban fantasy thriller, where the Changeling's Blood series that I'm starting next month is a bit more of what I'd almost call traditional urban fantasy in the Dresden Files mold.
Oh yeah, everybody likes that. Well,
so since you said you didn't have a lot of reader carryover from your sci-fi to your fantasy, what kind of launch plans and things like that are you going to attach to this new project, since it's obviously so different from the sci-fi?
Yeah. Mostly leaving that to my publicist and my publisher, both of whom work for me.
Oh, well, there you go.
We should definitely dig into
handle
that
it.
here.
Just handle it.
Handle it.
Large extent.
Handle it. So I'd like to talk more about that. And you know, we're getting pretty deep on some of these things and being very straightforward. But you do have to remember that, like the Onset already has 221 reviews with a 5.5-star rating. To serve and protect. So I mean, that's pretty awesome. I mean, a lot of people struggle to break into 3 digits on reviews, so that's excellent. I do need to push Josh into doing our sponsor for this episode, because otherwise he's gonna sit back there and not do it.
This one is
Mr. Humble.
I was not prepared. Hold on.
No, I was waiting until you're not prepared, and then I just throw it right in your face like that. That's how we.
I got it right in front of me here.
This one is special.
It is special
because this one is mine. I am sponsoring this episode, which I have never done in the history of the show before, with my latest book, Shadows of Neverland. While I'm sick, reading my own ad read.
Good job.
Before they can save their world, they must understand their past. After surviving Pan's surprise attack on their hideout, Wendy, Michael, and John leave to find allies in their fight against Hook. They venture into the unknown, confronting demons of their past while facing down enemies in the present. And the salvation of Neverland's future hangs in the balance. Shadows of Neverland is a fun, action-packed continuation of the Second Star series, a science fiction reimagining of the classic Peter Pan story. And I just nailed my own blurb. Thank you very much.
Well done, sir.
Right now it's on sale for 99 cents. I'm going to leave it there until November 1st. And then it'll kick back up to the regular price of $3.99. So if you're interested, please go pick it up. Do me a fave. Do me a solid and pick it up. Leave a review if you do. And that cover is not Tom Edwards Jr. That is a guy off of 99 Designs. His name is
It's Lacarto.
Lacarto. And that is completely custom not hand painted, but computer painted, hand painted, however you want to say it, from scratch. That cover and then the other two covers in the series are all done by the same.
Those are awesome covers, and I want to get that guy to do a whole series for me someday because they're pretty awesome. And the story, I've read it, so everybody should check it out.
Yes,
good stuff.
Thank you. So I'd like to get into the kind of mechanics of what you're doing, knowing that you're a plotter and going through these different series. Do you have I know, like when I talk to Scott about doing our projects, there are a lot of times where Scott has a couple projects going at once, and sometimes he's like, I've got to go read all the rest of my books to kind of figure out where I'm at. And I'm pretty much not. I'm at the same token. Yes, I do read them, but I've got a whole bunch of notes that I look over and then I get right back into it. So do you find it hard to go between the urban fantasy, science fiction genres, or do you flow pretty evenly through that?
I find I have to rotate or I go crazy.
Oh, good.
I find the rotation between universes helps me keep my writing fresh, helps me keep the universes fresh, and helps keep me sane. The variety is necessary for me to be able to keep doing this is the way I do.
Keep it fun. Keep it
Exactly.
invigorating and fresh.
Because when you're doing this 8 hours a day, you have to keep it invigorating and fresh.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask about. So you are a full-time writer, and I know the majority of the people that watch the show do aspire to that, and Scott and I are definitely trying to whip ourselves into shape to get there. And so how long have you been a full-time writer, and then can you
I'd like to hear a little bit too. So if you're working in there, is kind of what your daily process is.
Yeah.
Kind of how you put it together for a day.
Yeah.
I've been a full-time writer since November 1st, 2015. So almost exactly 2 years. Wow.
Congratulations again.
Thank you. I was a part-time accountant for 2 months as a changeover because my previous employer was quite supportive.
Oh, cool.
So they cut me back to a couple days a week for 2 months, and then I realized I didn't need them anymore and kicked them to the curb.
Thank you very much.
I stuck around about a month longer than I otherwise would have to train my replacement because I liked my boss.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, that's a good thing. That's the right thing to do.
Exactly. So, so I've been doing this full time for 2 years now. Wow. Sorry.
When you're having fun writing books.
It's one of those things. If occasionally one of the numbers gets brought out in front of me, and it's just like, wow, I've been doing this for 2 years and 20 books. What the hell happened? Where did this come from?
Yeah, it's amazing though.
And I've bounced through a bunch of different processes and procedures along the way, trying to find the thing that gets me the most productivity out of my day. I've tried every single, if someone's put a method up on the internet, I've probably tried it at this point. What I've settled on to at this point is basically what I think is this is just generally sprinting. So I write for half an hour, I do something else for half an hour, I write for half an hour, I do something else for half an hour, and I do that for about 8 to 10 hours, 5 days a week.
And how many words do you generally get down by doing? First of all,
I actually managed to get that eight hours in 4,000 to 5,000.
Oh, good. Yeah. Do you aim for a certain amount of words during your
I aim for 5,000 words a day.
Okay.
And that's kind of the target more than anything else.
Yeah.
Do your books have like an average word count per novel, or
depends on the series?
Yeah.
Some of them are 80, some of them are 95, some of them are 120.
Okay.
What determines their length?
That's what they say. That's what the series has ended up.
Oh, okay.
This is
I
where the story's
target.
done. Yeah.
Yeah.
I target 90 for most of the stuff. I target 95,000 words. The onset books ended up coming in shorter than that, so I started targeting shorter. And the Duchy of Terra books kept coming in longer, so I started targeting longer. That's basically about as much thought or process to that part as there is.
There you
Well,
go.
I mean, you know, the story takes as many words as it takes.
Exactly.
So,
Right.
you know.
Right.
So I'd like to ask, because I've heard everybody, or not everybody, a lot of people have talked about the Pomodoro Method, which comes from I think a kitchen timer, or I can't remember, but that's basically 25 minutes on and then a 5-minute break. And then you come back and there's a bunch of apps you can use.
Mhm.
And I like that because it gives you a chance to kind of refresh, but I'm really interested in the 30 on, 30 off and how that has affected you and how you kind of stumbled into that.
It started with me trying to experiment with the Pomodoro, basically. Okay. And I found the 5 minutes off wasn't really enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
So if I tried to only take 5 minutes off, I ended up taking half an hour or an hour anyway.
Right.
So I found that what worked best for me from there was at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, etc. I write, and I write a scene. Usually, I try not to write more than half an hour, but I write a scene. Excuse me.
So it's like 30 minutes on the hour, every hour.
And then I'll go play video games for half an hour or whatever.
Nice. That's the job I want.
30 minutes of writing, 30 minutes of Overwatch, 30 minutes of writing, 30 minutes.
I was telling Chuck yesterday that I had to get rid of my, or was it today? I had to get rid of my PC. We were talking about PC gaming.
Yeah.
And,
Fallout 4.
With 4 kids and a full-time job and a wife and the show and the writing, I could not game. I had no time to game. And
how do you breathe and sleep?
I don't. And I've got, and I've
it gets better.
I chug my coffee daily, and usually I get about 5 hours of sleep a night. And but yeah, I had no time to game, which is really depressing to me because I love gaming.
I love to game, and I haven't done it for probably 5 or 6 years, basically.
I haven't gamed in, let's see, when did you send me that email?
Oh,
so many.
I was playing Stellaris until I got that email. So.
We got a jokester in the house, everybody.
Right.
Well, I think hopefully when I go full time, that will be my goal. Except it would turn into 30 minutes of writing, 8 hours of Battlefield, whatever number is out at that time, and then
you have to put it on a timer.
I don't need timers as much anymore, but when I first started, timers were everything.
Yeah.
Like a 30-minute timer for video games, because otherwise you just keep going. They're designed to draw you in.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah, I use kind of the same method, but I don't think I could go play video games. I have to do something I want to get away from at the end of the break.
Right.
Yeah, like mowing the yard or something.
I'm curious about your. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, for me, it's as much a reward system as anything else. If I actually write, I can play video games.
Yes. Mine is I write and then I go pass out. That's my game. That's my. I write for 3 hours and then I go pass out for 5. That's
marathon sleeping. Huh?
Yes, and I don't need timers for that.
Now we know that video games are designed to keep you hooked in and draw you forward. So is there a way to take that addictiveness and put it into your writing, or have you even thought about that?
Not consciously.
Okay. Yeah. Well, because some video games are very story based and some of them are not. I find with video games, what gets me hooked in there is you're trying to level up all the time and get strong enough to handle whatever quest you're
I'm usually playing story games where I care about the story more than anything else. So if I have to grind in the game, I'm done.
Right.
Unless it's unless the game itself is really, really fun. I'm there for the story.
Yeah.
I'm curious on your planning method to kind of bring it back to writing. When you say that you outline and you do kind of the bare bones skeleton, can you walk us through maybe the process from idea generation to outlining and then to actually drafting?
Idea generation, I can't really. It's sort of one of those things that happens. I have a fertile field of pot bunnies that won't go away. So I have more ideas than I know what to do with.
Right.
So those kind of get slotted into a schedule that right now runs through the end of 2018 for my writing time.
Wow.
And then when I hit that time slot, I'll sit down and I'll spend about 2 days writing. Excuse me. I'll usually start with about a 400 or 500 word high level outline of here are the main plot points, the main character arcs, that kind of thing. And then I'll sit down and I'll turn that into about a 3,000 to 4,000 word skeleton of the entire novel.
Mm.
And then from that, I will go and write the story.
Now, when I do, so I've just started a new book, and this is actually the first book that I've started that I've been able to do the process that I wanted to do from beginning to end. One of like my second Star series, I had a great idea. I was like, Neverland in science fiction, and Peter Pan's the bad guy. And then I just went out and wrote, and my idea was to do kind of like what Hugh Howey did as a five book serial, then put them all together in an omnibus, and it didn't work out that way at all.
Because each one got longer, right?
Yeah. Well, each one kind of doubled, like Harry Potter. The first one was like this, and the second one and the third one. Well, so now this book that I'm working on now is I've been able to start from the beginning, come up with an idea, come up with some plot lines, and then generate an outline from beginning to end of everything that I need. And my outline was, I think, I don't know, 5,000 or 6,000 words, and it's very kind of it's extremely detailed in parts and not detailed in several different places. So anyway, in short, my question is, when I look at my outline and I kind of did an average of what I needed in the scene and what I thought I was going to put in there, I said, this is how much I need to hit a word count, because this novel is it needs to hit a certain word count for the category. So are you able to look at your outline and go, this will make me, like you said, the 95,000 words on Starship Mage?
Yeah, I know I can look. One of the things that's worrying me is I can look at the outline I have for my current work in progress, and I'm like, yeah, it's going to be a 110,000 word novel. I have 18 days to finish that.
Oh.
Sorry, to be clear, I'm already 20-something thousand words into it, but it needs to be done November 10th, November 11th, something like that.
Oh, no problem. We have confidence.
So you need to write about 90,000 words in 18 days.
Figuring 80 to 90,000 words in 18 to 20 days. Yeah.
Whew. It can be done.
It can be done. I have done it, and I will do it. I just have basically told my wife, so I can't be booked for anything until the middle of November. I will show up to gaming because I'm running both games we're in right now, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's insane.
So we've kind of avoided the elephant in the room. It's a very serious topic. We always generally cover in Keystroke Medium, and that is Word, Scrivener, or something else.
Word.
Right back.
Wow.
It's about
I
a
have
50-50
tried
spot, actually.
Scrivener. I have tried Open Office. I have tried a straight up notepad text editor, but I find Word really is it has all the tools I need, and I'm very familiar with it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Excellent. And then do you do any dictation, or are you just straight up typing?
straight up typist.
Awesome. And then the last question, well, not last question, because there'll be a bunch more. And this is a little bit different. As regards to your characters, I like to know if you have a favorite secondary character that you enjoy writing.
Favorite secondary character? Yeah.
Okay. Tell us about your secondary character that's...
Okay, that would be
Whatever.
Kitana from the Duchy of Terra books.
Yeah.
She shows up as a pirate executive officer in the first book, ends up technically being the main character's indentured servant, and along the way they find out that she's A, very, very, very old, B, absolutely fucking crazy, and C, run period.
Perfect.
The crazy ones are always fun to write.
Yeah.
Always.
True.
Everybody loves that.
We do have a question from the live chat. Kayleen, how are you? Thanks for joining. Everybody else, thanks for joining too. And stop your shenanigans about Word in the live chat, or I'll lock it all down. But
I
Kaylee
can't see
Williams,
anything.
well, they're all supporting you, so
Yeah,
that's
I don't get it, but all right.
everybody's against the host, but whatever. It's only our show. Do whatever you want. Kayleen Williams asks, Glynn, when you're writing, how many drafts do you do? Such as, are you to the point in your writing where you can do an outline and then your first couple of drafts are fairly clean, or how do you work with that?
I do one draft. I've only ever done one draft. I used to do a lot more polishing on that draft in the end, but of late it is I write the outline, I write the book, I do one read through for glitches basically, and then it goes to my copy editor.
You use the same copy editor who's real
Every
familiar
time.
with your work?
Yep.
And then how much corrections do they generally kick back, or they just kind of handle them, or?
He sends it back to me with track changes from work, so I go through everything. There's usually, putting aside commas, there's usually about 500 or 600 corrections in the book. I drop words a lot, apparently.
Yeah.
So in the middle of the sentence, there'll be a word missing.
I stopped arguing about commas a long time ago. Every editor gives you different commas, and I'm just like, yep, whatever you say. That's what
Exactly.
Yeah, my last copy editor told me I was genetically incapable of properly using a comma.
It could happen.
Mine insists my commas are feral, and it's his job to rehome them.
Nice.
Editors are very passionate about these things, and thank God for them, because
I got my edits back on Shadows the other day, and I think I had 1,100 corrections and track changes, and I think 900 of them were commas are my nemesis. And what's also funny is I'm slightly dyslexic, so I'll type words that aren't there or read words that aren't there. And so she sends me notes like, I'm pretty sure you meant this, but you didn't say that. And I'm like, oh, yes, I did. In my head, I said that.
Yeah. Read what I meant, not what I
think
wrote.
The first time I got a document back from Richard, it came back with over 5,000 corrections and track changes.
Wow.
It's really important to find a good editor that you like working with. I've been through several that are very good, but I remember my first professional edit. It took me 4 months. It took me 41 days to write the book. And it took me 4 months to finish all the edits and revisions because there was something on every single line.
Jeez.
Every single line. It had multiple entries. And, after we kind of got more in touch with each other a little bit, it was better. And I felt like I had to give every single one of those some serious consideration. And now I realize there's a whole category of things. If my editor says that's grammatically correct, I don't bother looking it up or checking it. I'm like, you're right.
Yep.
Moving on.
I do a lot. I scroll through the track changes, and then I find a comment, and I read the comment, and I say, okay, I'll fix that, and then highlight the whole page and go accept, and then move on to the next one.
Yeah.
I look at every single change, but I'll admit, if it's punctuation, I don't look at it very hard.
Yeah. Right. Well, there's the next button on your track changes. You can hit next, and it'll go to it, and you hit accept or reject.
Yep.
And you can rip through one pretty fast.
That's how I go through it at this point. But yeah, my editor came on the recommendation of Shannon McGuire of, he is the copy editor that makes her scream the least.
That's awesome.
That is a glowing recommendation as far as I'm concerned.
And a good editor is the bomb for sure.
I won't pretend that my editor hasn't made me scream, but he makes me scream the least.
Oh yeah, there's gonna be some swearing and gnashing of teeth and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Do we want to talk about book covers, or are we still in editing?
Absolutely, let's talk about it.
Because book covers are very important. I love, like a lot of writers, we're all kind of multi-genre artists.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of writers, like, they write, but they also like art. They also like different things. So I'm always really looking for a good book cover. So what's your approach to book covers?
I have the visual aesthetic sense of a blind bat.
I can relate.
So I married an artist, and she's fantastic.
There you go. See, easy.
But
go marry an artist.
She did the early covers, and then as time moved on, we outsourced it. So now Tom Edwards does my Duchy of Terra and Castle Federation covers, and Jeff Brown does my Starship Mage and Vigilante covers. Excuse me. And a gentleman by the name of Shen Fei is redoing the Onset covers and will be doing the Changeling's Blood series.
Oh, fantastic.
I really like the Interstellar Mage cover. We talked about this yesterday when
Yeah,
we were.
I love it.
It basically sums up everything that the series is in one fantastic image. And I wonder if I could share that while we're
Do an overlay. Do a manly overlay.
manly overlay.
So we got
Overlay.
Glenn, Chuck,
Hey, now that I'm on the
show.
show, does that mean you're just going to paste it over my face?
Oh, that's a good idea.
And you'll be talking. They'll be moving with you. It'll be great. So, yeah, I mean, I think, all of your book covers, they have, as a thumbnail, it's very important. I can read
Yep.
the typography clearly. The colors are good. It's not too busy. I mean, I think it shows a higher level of professionalism when you have a good book cover.
I'm curious. Did you sit down with conversations with him about what you wanted to do with the cover and?
So all of my covers, usually I send over about a 3-4 sentence description of what I'm after, the artist's brief. And then they'll send me back a rough sketch, a high level thing, and I'll go yay or nay to that. Usually I'll just have adjustments to that. It's gotten to the point where I've been working with Tom Edwards for so long that Tom Edwards' rough sketches that he sends me are like 75% complete covers.
Yeah.
Because I'm not usually making very many changes to what Tom does for me.
Right.
Tom does such a good work. We love Tom. And
here's the Starship, the Interstellar Mage cover.
That is a great cover.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, is that by Tom or
That one's Jeff Brown.
That's Jeff Brown. Okay.
Yeah.
It's I mean, like I said, you can look at that cover and you go, okay, it's magic in space and they're on spaceships. I mean, that's
Yep.
I don't know if you could get an any more just simple cover where you look at it. And yeah, Scott, you're right. The covers are fantastic in that.
Yeah.
They're all good, and they have to work as a thumbnail. That's the biggest thing, I think.
Oh yeah, that was actually something I had to poke Tom on a few times when we were first working together. Is I get a cover from him, like that's not going to work as a thumbnail. It has to work as a thumbnail.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and if you look at, and it depends genre by genre. Like science fiction obviously has some conventions, but like if you were writing like a thriller,
Yep.
a lot of times they're mostly typography, and there might be an awesome picture behind the typography, but you can't even hardly see it unless you really look for it, and it's hard to get past that. Like, well, I got to show off this art that I paid for, but it's not the most important thing.
Right.
No, you have to conform to the standards of the genre.
Right. Because you're making a promise to your reader.
Yeah. Sometimes breaking from the standards of the genre works for you as well. I had a lot of people with the first Onset cover complaining about the models we had not being, Bond sexy, I think was the phrasing someone used. But I think the fact that, they actually look like real cops was part of what sold the book.
Right. You can relate.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned the 2 urban fantasy books that you have coming up this year. Do you have anything else coming out this year that you want to make people aware of?
This year still, let me think. I have Changeling's Fealty coming out next month. We have Oath of Vengeance with Terry Mixon, also probably coming out at the end of next month. And we have Operation Medusa, which is the final Castle Federation book, coming out in December.
Wow. Your productivity is really just kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah, it really is.
My comparison point remains Amanda Lee. So,
And
she's a former newspaper journalist, so she writes 10 to 12,000 words a day.
Oh my God.
Well, you can get in different types of groups. Like I'm in a group right now on Facebook, and it's the 100,000 word challenge. It's kind of like they were going to do NaNoWriMo, but let's go. But you see a bunch of people that are just slaying it, and then I'm kind of a medium performer in that group, but that's still a lot.
I did 100,000 words in July for the first time. It's not something I try to do on a regular basis.
Right, and I think that writing fast is great, but
you have to. I didn't write 5,000 words a day when I started being a full-time writer. I think I was writing like 2,000 words a day. So you have to find a pattern that works for you, and you have to find You have to be very comfortable in your voice and your skills before you can push to that kind of speed.
Let me ask you this, and I know we're getting close to the end. I ask real specific questions and things like, so you think better writing early in the morning, late at night? It doesn't matter.
Afternoon, usually for me.
Okay.
Starting to become more and more protective of my afternoons as I'm realizing they're when I get my best work done. But
is that because you got other things going on in the morning, or is it just
usually, well, let's be honest, it's because I don't get up until 10 or 11 o'clock.
social morning, basically.
So we are coming to the end of the show, but I always like to ask what piece of advice that you know now that you didn't know when you started off, what would you kind of share to anybody trying to get into the game now or trying to make their career better? Or
two pieces of advice I like to give for that one. The first is to realize and accept that your first book is going to bomb. Like unless you're very, very lucky at this point, if you're self-publishing, your first book is going to vanish into the mists that are Amazon. You need to put out multiple books. You need to keep going. You need to demonstrate to readers that you can sustain a series. But the flip side, the other side of the coin is you also need to understand your limits. You can't expect to start off writing 100,000 words a month. You have to understand, what can I get into my life without destroying myself? What can I sustain without burning out? You have to keep putting out books. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
right.
If you burn out after book 2 and don't put anything out for 2 years, you've wasted your time. If it takes you 6 months, to write each book, but you start regularly putting out a book every 6 months, you actually have a chance of making something of this.
And so would you recommend, I know a lot of people do the kind of blast method where you write 3 or 4 and then, hit the 30, 60, 90 day cliffs where you're like, bam, 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 releasing a book. Would you recommend that to people starting out now? Or
so my experience with that was with the Onset series, and it works really well, but follow through is everything. So if you have 4 books ready to go and you put out one every month for 4 months, when's the 5th one coming out? If the 5th one isn't coming out for 6 months, you have a problem.
Right.
So you want to if you have that 3-4 novels, you want to use it to give yourself space to build out to write the next book. But you want to make sure that the book after that blast doesn't come months and months and months later. You want to still be fresh in people's minds.
Very good.
That's good advice, because it's easy to get yourself into a trap there, because if you I got 4 months to write book 5, this will be no problem. Not putting in mind all the other things that you might want to do during that time.
Like a day job in a lot of cases.
Like a day job, or
Yes.
in my case, like you talked about, having tons of story ideas. It's really easy to get sidetracked. It gets a little hard in the middle of the book. I'll write this other idea.
I have beaten that habit out of myself with a stick.
Yeah. I need to borrow that stick.
Yeah, that's an important stick.
Nice. Well, everybody that came and hung out with us on the live show, thank you guys for coming and hanging out. That was great times in the live chat. If you're listening on the feed and you're not watching live, you're
Why not?
wrong. And now we're listening to
That's the wife.
Sean. What was Staying Alive? Staying Alive.
Yeah.
Staying alive.
I do the walk though, or else
Oh,
yeah, do the yeah.
that was the only time you're probably going to hear me.
No,
sing
that's
on
not.
the show.
We've heard you sing.
No, we've heard you sing
on
before,
the
buddy.
show. And
No,
so
you have not.
Yeah, everybody's new has got to go back and watch all the episodes.
True. Yes. Go back and
Find those spots.
You go back and find the places that I have sung. If you find all the episodes where I've sung, I'll send you a free hat. How about that?
That's what I was just thinking. There you go.
Anyway, thanks everybody for coming hanging out. You made Chuck's first hosting show very fun and enjoyable. Chuck, we're glad to have you on the team, buddy.
Thanks,
Happy to
Chuck.
be here.
Glenn, thanks for coming on, man, and taking some time out of your very hectic schedule to spend some time talking with your books for us, man. It's great.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot, Glenn.
Next week, we have Jamie Albright on the show, and then we will be off on the 6th because Scott and I will be in Vegas partying it up with a whole bunch of writers at the 20 Books to Vegas conference.
We're gonna be all starstruck and amazed, and
No, they will be Star Trek at us. They're like, oh my God, it's Keystroke Medium. who are these guys? So definitely come back for the shows after that. We've got some really good guests lined up for November and December. You guys don't want to miss that. And this Monday after Jamie's show, we have our super secret reveal show that we're doing after our live show. So there'll be a short, very interesting reveal show next Monday. You guys
So
want
two things. Jamie's books, if you have it, it's a little bit different genre for us, but she did something really awesome, and she's really done well in her first book and her second book. So that's unique. So everybody should tune in to check that. And the reveal show, of course, we're very excited, and we've been stringing everybody along for probably 6 months now.
I feel like we're that guy on the Geico commercial where he has the fishing pole and he's like, oh, you almost got it. Oh, you got to be quicker than that.
There's a dollar.
Just kidding.
So anyway, thanks guys for hanging out. For Scott Moon and Chuck Manley, I am Josh Hayes. You have been live with Glen Stewart. Make sure you come back.
Buy his books right now.
Go buy
They're
his books. And come back next time. Hang out with us. We're going to talk about some reading. We're going to talk about some writing. And, of course, everything in between right here on Keystroke Medium. Have a fantastic Monday.
Take it easy, guys.
Later.